Hey friends, my name's Georgie. It is such a joy to have you listening in to the Just Breathe podcast, where I'll be talking all things breathing to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. I cannot even put into words how excited I am for you guys to listen in on today's conversation. This is an interview I've been building up to for quite some time, and I feel incredibly lucky to have been given the opportunity to chat to someone who has made such an impact on both my personal and professional life. Who is this person, I hear you wonder? Today's powerful conversation is with Jim Murphy. Jim is a performance coach to some of the best athletes and leaders in the world, and he is also the author of possibly one of the best books I've ever read, Inner Excellence. Now, it's all in the interview, so I don't want to give too much away about the book because there's no one better to hear it from than Jim himself. But in a nutshell, Inner Excellence shows you how to develop mental toughness and perform with freedom, train your subconscious mind and expand your beliefs, overcome mental blocks and get out of your own way, that's a big one, and develop empowering habits and transform your life. It's filled with mental performance enhancing exercises, inspiring interviews, and science-based studies. And Inner Excellence trains your heart and mind for extraordinary performance and the best possible life. Whoever you are, whatever you do, anyone can benefit from the principles in this book. And I am not exaggerating when I say this could quite literally change the course and the way you approach life in quite a profound way. It certainly did for me. So I really hope you enjoy the conversation and walk away feeling empowered and inspired. A little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Just Breathe podcast. It really helps to grow our breathing community. Let's keep bringing people together and empowering them with the power of the breath. All right, let's dive right into today's powerful conversation. I'm so excited for you to hear all of the wisdom that Jim has to share. This is episode 42 of Just Breathe with Jim Murphy. Hey Jim, what's up?
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It is honestly such a privilege to get to chat to you. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while, so this is awesome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I'd love to dive right in. And firstly, for anyone who hasn't read Inner Excellence, please get yourself a copy. It's a book that has influenced my life already in such profound ways. But I'd love to jump into the story of how you came to write the book. I know you went into solitude and sort of isolation to do extensive research for about 5 years, was it?
That's right.
Yeah, I'd love to know what drew you to do that. Was it sort of a very quick realization that that's what you needed to do, or was it sort of a gradual build up that led you to that decision? Because that's a pretty rash thing to do, right?
Right. Yeah, it definitely wasn't a quick decision. I mean, so what happened was I was a baseball player, played in the Cubs organization and got injured and had to retire. And so it was devastating. My whole identity was wrapped around myself being a professional athlete. And when I lost that, I felt like I lost everything. And so I was a personal trainer in graduate school. And after I left the Cubs, I just went back to personal training and was not really sure what to do with my life. And I was really looking for something more meaningful and or something that I could devote my life to, something that I was willing to live and die for, and devote the rest of my life to. And I just didn't feel like I had that. And personal training was awesome. It's just I wanted to do more. And I get a call from a friend of mine in Arizona, former teammate Ricky Scruggs in Tucson, Arizona, and said, "Can you come down for the weekend to help me launch a baseball academy?" And so I flew down there, and not only did I decide to help him for the weekend, I decided to move down there and help him part-time. So I got rid of my over half my possessions, including my television set, broke up with my girlfriend, and went to live this life of relative solitude in the desert. I only knew a couple people, and yeah, it was quite a big difference in my life. Quite a change.
And did you know that you were going out to research what made people great or excellent?
No, I didn't know. I had no plans. My plan was to go be in solitude, and that's why I got rid of the television. And back then we didn't have streaming and things like that, so no TV meant I wasn't watching, hardly anything. Wow. And yeah, it was. I didn't want to be lonely and then waste my time watching TV as well. And so I wanted to come face to face with my thoughts and figure out what am I going to do with my life. And just, I always, since I was little, thought I was destined to do something that was great. And I thought it was to be a Major League Baseball superstar or play in the NFL and be a superstar. And when I got injured in that dream ended, I was, like I said, devastated. And I just thought there must be something else. And so I need to find it. So I went to the desert to live that life of solitude until I could find it.
Yeah. So when did you find it? When was that switch flicked that you knew actually, and of course you're an athlete yourself, so I suppose the seed had already subconsciously been sown in a way, and the isolation, reading the book now, of course, is one of the qualities of a selfless actualizer, which I'm sure we'll go into later to expand on that. But when did that switch flip in terms of understanding that you were going to research how people achieved or stepped into that ultimate potential?
Yeah, so it was lonely when I was out there. My first New Year's Eve, I remember I'm in this empty house with no furniture or hardly any, and I hear a noise. I'm writing in my journal, and I go outside and I see fireworks, and that's when I found out it was New Year's Eve. And so every day was the same. Yeah. Sunday night, Monday night, Friday night, I wasn't going to social events. And so Sunday morning was church, and that was kind of how my week went. But yeah, it took a while, and I'm working part-time at the Centerfield Baseball Academy. And then I decided to become a personal coach to pro baseball players. I was at the academy. I thought, what could I do? And is there something I could do with baseball since I have all that experience? And I decided to become this personal coach. I'd never heard of anyone doing that. I just thought maybe I could try that. And my first two athletes did amazing. And so I decided to put together a little manual on how to have peace and confidence under pressure. Because with the success of my first two or three clients, I thought, this is something that I could really dive into. One of the first clients was a career minor leaguer and became one of the biggest Major League Baseball rookies stories that year. Another client was a softball player at the University of Arizona, and she had really struggled her first year. And I met her in the off season, and we visualized her getting the game-winning hit off the best pitcher in the country to win the World Series. And that's essentially what happened. So these are two of my first clients. And then so I'm putting together this manual on how to have peace and confidence under pressure for future clients. And I decided to call a sports psychologist and ask him, how can an Olympic athlete train for 4 years for an event that may last less than a minute and have peace and confidence in that situation? The first question actually was, how can a Major League Baseball player in Game 7 of the World Series, bases loaded, bottom of the ninth, down by one, how can that guy have peace and confidence in that situation? And so that phone call to the sports psychologist brought more questions than answers. So I called another and I called another. And that's why I spent 5 years of full-time writing and research, 60, 70, 80 hours a week for 5 years straight, to figure out the answer to that question.
That is insane, but I imagine so incredibly fulfilling. And there is something so fulfilling about asking a question, and then just finding more questions, and that curiosity just expanding and expanding and expanding to the point where it's just what I found with breathing as well, to the point where I've said, I could research one nostril for my entire life, and I think I'd be so incredibly fulfilled, because there's just so much to learn about how breath influences the human body. I'm really interested to know, actually, when you were performing yourself as an athlete to where you are now, I suppose you said you always knew you wanted to do something great. And, now you've coached some incredible athletes, some incredible people who have achieved greatness themselves as well, which I'm sure must be incredibly fulfilling. How does that compare in terms of what you are doing now, that goal you are chasing now, to when your goal was just to be a sporting superstar?
Yeah, it's a good question, because when I was growing up, I thought I was destined for greatness, to be a superstar since I was little. I always knew that I wanted to be a professional athlete since I was like 8 years old. And so when I got drafted by the Chicago Cubs, it was a dream come true. The thing that's different now is that back then I thought my destiny and my dream are the same thing, which is I'm going to be a superstar in the big leagues, and I'm going to hit home runs, and every guy is going to want to be me. Every girl is going to want to be with me. I'm going to make millions of dollars and live happily ever after. Mm-hmm. That's the best possible life that anyone could live. And Jim Murphy's going to do it. Yeah. And Jim Murphy did not do it. And so, like I said, I was devastated. But what I've realized since then, through the research and through the years and coaching and everything, is that what I always wanted, what I really wanted, was to feel fully alive. Mm-hmm. And I've had moments of that growing up, and baseball and sports gave that to me, where I would feel glimpses of being wholehearted and feeling that flow of resonance, where like my body's like, it's like it's like tingling and super intense.
Time
excitement
disappears, and
and so I thought it was the home runs and the fame and all that. That's what I really wanted. But I realized now that it's that was a glimpse of what I really wanted, and what I really want is to feel fully alive. To have a meaningful, fulfilling life that has extraordinary experiences and deep, enriching relationships, where I'm learning and growing and sharing that with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of your research and from reading the book, I'm on my second time reading it now. Of course, a lot came up in terms of what stops us from pursuing that ultimate goal, or from getting closer to having those meaningful relationships and having a wholehearted, enriching experience. Something you talk about that I just love the term itself is the affluenza virus. Could you explain that a little bit more in terms of what you mean by that, and why it holds us back so much, particularly in the Western modern world?
Yeah, it's interesting because, the word virus has taken on a new meaning in the last years, with the worldwide pandemic. Yeah. And, but I was writing about this before the pandemic came out, about this affluenza virus, which is a term that I'd heard before. But the way I use it is it's the pursuit of more, really trying to get more. It's really super common in Western culture, but just this consumeristic, transactional, I have to get more, I have to achieve more, be more, get more. And it's a treadmill that's really dangerous, especially if you're gifted. If you have a lot of resources, which includes skills, then it's really dangerous that you'll get on this treadmill of devoting your life to pursuing and chasing numbers or money or trophies or approval. You really just end up chasing your tail, and most people do that until they die. And scary thing, I think, to me, is that the more talent you have, the more susceptible you are, because you really, it's so easy if you have a lot of talent or resources, then easy to get caught up in all of those temporary surface level things that seem to bring what you want, but they're just an illusion because they're temporary.
Yeah. So when people say things like an ego boost, like giving people an ego boost, telling someone how incredible they were and constantly soaking that up, the fame, glory, all of the benefits that come with, say, being a professional athlete or being very successful in business or whatever, all amazing things. But you're saying that actually that's not where it's at, that ego boost is unhelpful, that actually, and I obviously want to get into the importance of discomfort and suffering as well, and why that is such an integral part of the journey, which is interesting to bring in terms of why feeding the ego actually could be the one thing that sets us back.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. The ego, when I think about the ego, I think of 5 things, and I explain this in the book. Comparing yourself with others, and that your ego is always threatened and always comparing, and it never stops. And it's comparing, generally in Western culture, 5 things: possessions, achievements, looks, money, and status. PALMS, it's the acronym. And the problem with ego is it takes us away from what we really want, and it takes us away from our freedom and self-mastery and real joy. So yeah,
for sure. And I guess this leads me on, especially when you're talking about people with skill. Can anyone achieve inner excellence, do you think? Can anyone achieve self-mastery, or is that only really reserved for people who are born with that God-given talent in some specific area, like an athlete that's naturally a runner, say, or like someone who is more naturally motivated? I think I told you in an email before we started filming that someone once said to me and suggested to me that only people who've been through trauma, and they were talking about me at the time, could be naturally motivated or could have that fire within them, that they will do whatever it takes to make whatever they're pursuing at the time happen. And that includes pain, discomfort, struggling. You mentioned in the book, not getting that extra hour of sleep, getting up at 5 a.m. to, maybe do something that you rather not do that morning, etc., etc. The list goes on. What's your opinion on that? Can anyone achieve this, or is it just meant for certain individuals?
There's a book called Can't Hurt Me. David Goggins, this Navy SEAL.
Yeah, I know who David Goggins is. He is a cool but crazy guy, right?
Yeah, he's achieved these incredible physical achievements, and it's an amazing story. The audiobook is really good. But the reason why he's achieved so much, it seems to be, is that he's suffered. He's suffered a lot, and the suffering has created this ability to withstand suffering. And when a young athlete asks me, what do they need to do to play on the PGA Tour or the Major League Baseball or whatever it is, one of the things that's so important that I tell them is you have to learn how to face adversity. You have to learn how to sacrifice, and to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and even learn how to suffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you think it's that suffering that actually initiates the drive and the fire that people have? And of course, it's important to say that some people experience immense suffering and awful things happen to them that do need immediate addressing and attention. But the kind of suffering we're referring to here is that discomfort, that pushing yourself beyond what you thought you could do, to improve yourself. It's always important to mention that, of course, suffering is a broad term, and that there are some parts of suffering that do need immediate attention, but that other suffering. You say that the price of fullness of life is costly, and that the other option is much more comfortable and much easier, but it will never get you those fulfilling, wholehearted moments that actually everyone is chasing, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, so many people talk about freedom. Freedom is something that people desperately want.
Especially right now, hey?
Yeah, through COVID and, feeling so confined. And, but yeah, the first version of the book that took 5 years to write came out 10 years ago. And the first sentence is freedom is costly. The book that's out now with the blue cover, the revised edition, came out a year ago. I spent 2 more years working on that one in your hands. And so freedom is a big part of and as you can see in the title of the book is Train Your Mind for Extraordinary Performance and the Best Possible Life.
Yeah.
And so I define the best possible life as one filled with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Like I shared earlier, a life that's with deep contentment, joy, and confidence, independent of circumstance, with those amazing experiences and deep enriching relationships where you're learning and growing. And yeah, I really think freedom is costly, because what I mean by that is if you have big goals, then your freedom is going to be way different than someone else's. So say we have person A has big goals and person B has no goals. Person B has, in a sense, total freedom. They can do whatever they want. They can go fishing on the weekend. They can go to movies. They can sleep in as long as they want. They can do whatever they want. Complete freedom. Person A cannot do that. Not if they want to achieve their goals. So person B is choosing the freedom of doing whatever they want every day. And not having a real focus. Yeah. Person A is saying, I want to have the freedom to play center court at Wimbledon, for example. I want to have the freedom to play on the PGA Tour, things like that. So if they want that freedom, then they have to give up a lot of other things. It's choices that we all make. What is it that you really want most in your life? And what are the boundaries that you're going to set? I was going to share earlier that what everyone wants, the greatest human desire and need is to be fully known and fully loved. Yeah. And most people spend their entire lives pursuing this unknowingly, trying to get approval and just they spend their life chasing these surface level temporary things that don't bring fulfillment and meaning when we're created for glory and created for so much more. And so, yeah, I think we're all, everyone has is created for inner excellence. Every single person is created for glory. And by glory, I mean, the brilliance and weightiness of infinite inherent worth. Yeah. All these definitions are in the back of the book. And they're not necessarily Webster's definitions, they're inner excellence definitions. Yeah. What I think that is important and meaningful in our lives to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I love in the book is that you talk about being excellent, but not perfect. And I know you write it in one of the practices to practice visualizing presence, not perfection. And that really resonated with me. I really believe with social media, as wonderful as it is for being a vehicle to communicate important messages and giving people a voice, it's also added to the pressure, especially for the younger generation, to adhere to this false sense of perfection, which actually doesn't exist. Again, it's that another surface level sort of vision of reality, when actually the real worth, that feeling of being fully alive that you described, even from my experience, which I'm only 26, I consider myself having very little experience. I found the greatest richness in something that I totally failed, or where I was willing to, like Brené Brown says, step into the arena and get my face dirty and get bloody and fall over, but then get back up again and keep walking, because I said, well, at least I'm not someone sitting on the sidelines and just watching that person get muddy and bloody. At least I'm in there. and I'm fighting for it. And there's something so enriching about that. And even, you know, an experience I had of say working in a cafe when I was acting, a bunch of actors working in a cafe struggling to pay their rent. There was this unity and this wholeheartedness sometimes when you're making that coffee, because you're all suffering together for a bigger goal, that you're there and you're living it and you're hustling and you're doing it. And, you know, even though I didn't end up going into my career as a performer because I felt a higher calling, it's so interesting to me, especially after reading your book. And I remember you talking about being in the presence of Nelson Mandela, but then on the other hand, also being in your friend's apartment when he was just playing a beautiful song, and that actually you felt incredibly wholehearted listening to your friend playing a song, even though you were under extremely difficult circumstances. And I do find that I'm sure everyone has a story along one of those lines where they felt so at one with themselves and with where they were in their life, even though perhaps their circumstances were extremely difficult. And so, yeah, I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Well, there's kind of a lot there. One of the things that you mentioned about being willing to fail is such a big, important thing. If you have really big goals, and I think everyone, like I said, is created for glory, and having big goals is it can be confusing. What I mean by big goals is since you're created for glory and you have this infinite inherent worth, then what does it mean to be my true self? And how can what am I created for? What am I here for on this planet? And I think that we're all walking in either love or fear, either self-expression or self-protection. And so when you're walking in love, then you're expressing your true self, which is selfless, and sharing your gifts with the world. That's walking in love, unconditionally. And then when you're walking in fear, which we've all done both, walking in fear is self-protection. What are people going to think about me? What if I screw this up? Not wanting to take a chance. And so obviously I try to help people walk in love and do that myself. That the fearlessness that comes with walking in love and sharing your gifts and expressing to the world what you're here to do.
Yeah. And do you think being fearless also goes into that stepping into your authentic self with a willingness to be judged, to be criticized, to be slammed down perhaps multiple times, to not be, I suppose, received in the way that maybe you would have been if you showed up as what especially the modern world wants you to be, that image. I mean, especially for men as well, but specifically speaking as a woman here, to show up as what society posts that a woman should be or shouldn't be in a sense. And there's a lot of still, I can't believe, criticism on women that are too strong or too strong-willed.
So I work with, I've been really blessed and thankful to work with some of the best athletes in the world and the highest ranked athletes in the world. And so men and women. Yeah. And one of the things that I share with them is that if you want to be the best in the world, or perhaps a better way to say it is to be the very best that you could possibly be, which may include being the best in the world, then imagine climbing a mountain. And that mountain peak is that being the very best. Well, as you're climbing that peak, the air gets thinner, and the climb is very steep, and you become vulnerable, and more eyes are on you the higher you get. And if you're not willing, if you want to compete against the best in the world, then you have to be willing to fail in a big way. Because if you're not, then you need to choose a smaller peak. because everyone that's been up to that peak has failed in a big way, but the media just doesn't cover it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and be comfortable with a thinner air, be comfortable with being judged, being comfortable with people, you know, the naysayers and the haters, and that's a really big thing to get, really difficult thing, because I shared earlier, our deepest and greatest need is to be fully known and fully loved. And when you have this big goal and you're climbing this mountain, getting towards the top, you're going to get the opposite of that from a lot of people. And can you handle that? And so for me, the way I handle it is I try not to get my worth through my results and my circumstances. Most of my life I've done that. It's definitely not the way that I recommend, because it's very roller coastery, and way too much time on the bottom and not enough time with those great moments. And so for me, I get the sense of worth from my relationship with God, and that because I know how I want to live and how I want to feel. I want to live with deep contentment, joy, and confidence, independent of circumstance, independent of the results, independent of what anyone thinks of this interview. That's how I want to live. And I don't want to be, for most of my life, I've spent it wanting that approval. And because as we know, that I've been sharing, is that your ego is going to say, hey, if you make this putt, if you get that promotion, if you make the sale, then people are going to love you. You're going to get approved. And it's mostly a subconscious thing. I'm going to get what I really want if I'm successful here. And that's the illusion. You're going to, and what I shared earlier is that the more success you get, the more you're going to crave it. And the more you crave it, the more you're going to pursue, and then you're going to fail more. And then it's going to be this real emptiness, where you think what you want most, and you've gotten it, but it didn't provide the lasting joy, peace that you really want, but not knowing where to get it. You try and get it more from what I call the third world, the world of results and circumstances.
So actually then it's an act of surrender rather than an act of pursuit, to a degree. I mean, hey,
there's a powerful word, surrender.
Yeah.
Not a word that we use too much in Western culture, but it's a very key, powerful word.
Yeah, because of course there is the pursuit of living a wholehearted life and living with fullness of life. But I read recently in Excellence that if you cling, and I may butcher this is not verbatim, but something like, if you cling to life, you will lose it. If you surrender to life, you open the door to step into, everything you've ever wanted. It's backwards to what many people think.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like the walking in love or fear.
Yeah.
When we're walking in fear, it's like, I need to get more and better transactions. I need to have more for myself. Me and my family got to get more, got to protect. And that fear-based way of living is unfortunately, it's the default human way.
Right.
And it's not the default to unconditionally love others. And that's why, this message is so important, because in love, unconditional love is the most powerful force in the universe. It's the energy that holds the stars in place, spins the earth, grows the grass, and creates the most powerful and enriching life possible. It's a fearless life. There's no fear in love. And fear is a future and self-centered focus, whereas love is a present and others-centered focus.
Yeah.
I just received an email about someone who was wanting to have more connections and just kind of have a better life. And I just got the email this morning. What I'm going to share with that person is that if you want to have a better life, then the key is to really clarify a purpose beyond yourself that you can devote your life to. My purpose is to share God's love, wisdom, and courage with athletes and leaders around the world. And so what I try to do is I have reminders everywhere. I just sold my little retreat center because I'm moving into a bus, as I said earlier. That's the plan, to simplify my life and share inner excellence around the US in that bus. But the place that I had before was this retreat center that I let people come and stay, and there was writing all over the windows and everywhere. It was all of these things that I wanted to fill my mind with about the type of person that I wanted to become, and living my purpose.
Yeah, because we talk about the act of surrender, but then beyond that, once you've found that purpose, it is very specific. Reading the book anyway, it seems that in terms of specificity of where you place your energy, where you place your attention, what conversations you have, who you associate with, that if they are not serving to step into your authentic self, to step towards that purpose beyond self, then it's a waste of your time and energy, and you're stepping backwards. I love those 4 points that you talk about: checking in with every day, give my best, 100% of what I can give. And I use that with some of my clients now as well, that if you walk in with 30%, give 100% of that 30%, not push past, etc. Be present, be grateful. And this is the biggest one, I think: focus on my routines and only what I can control. How much energy do you think we waste as a population focusing on stuff that we have zero control over?
Most of most people's energy is focused on things that they can't control. One of the biggest things, there's 3 big challenges that all of us have, especially performers. And that's a mind that overthinks, overanalyzes. So one of the biggest challenges in performance is too much thinking and overanalyzing. Mm-hmm. Another one is judgment or negative thinking. And then the third one is self-conscious, concern for how we're going to come across and what people will think about us after we say this or perform. The judgment is so prevalent. And when I say judgment, I differentiate that between discernment. And again, the definitions are in the back of the book. Discernment is to use wisdom and how to approach this situation or this person. Judgment is to lay down a negative verdict about self, circumstance, or others. And so judgment, you can think about being judgmental. It's a negative thing. And every time we judge, we're really judging ourselves. We judge a circumstance, we judge someone else, we're really judging ourselves. And the way it works subconsciously is that we create this negative energy within us. Some goes to that person that we're judging, and some come back to us and kind of percolates within us and creates more self-consciousness and puts us onto that little bit more into that road of fear and self-protection whenever we judge. And judging others is so prevalent. I just think about my life, and in my mind, as I've done more to observe my thoughts, so much of it, majority of it has been judgment of circumstances, results, others, and self. The majority of my thoughts for most of my life have been judgment. And that's really inhibited my ability to be my true self and share God's love, wisdom, and courage with the world.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like an incredibly anxiety-induced, stressful way of living. Of course, which the majority of the population are in this adrenalized default mode of fight or flight, this almost survival mode where nothing will ever be good enough, or they'll never be successful enough in their version of success, which as we discussed in terms of the affluenza virus is totally surface level. But there was an incredible doctor I interviewed called Dr. Ilamanga who talks a lot about burnout, and she calls this age the age of burnout. She says it's never been so prevalent because the majority of the population are stuck and locked in an adrenalized, panicked, anxiety-induced state. And it totally resonates with what you just said in terms of judging, comparing, criticizing, be that yourself or other people, doesn't matter. It's still a constant state of stress. So are people actually ever relaxing in terms of teaching breathwork? I wonder, honestly, physiologically, if they're ever really switching off. And no wonder there's so many autoimmune diseases on the rise right now, which say cause unknown. No, we all know the cause. It's stress. You know?
Mm-hmm. Actually, I was diagnosed in 2016. I was at the Ryder Cup. I remember that because I had a rash on my stomach with Hashimoto's hypothyroid, and so autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
But I want to share with you two. So Inner Excellence has 9 disciplines, and I'll share with you 2 of them. One is to simplify your life, and another one is to be still. And I think about the simplify your life. One of the things I think of is to reduce your needs. Like right now I'm doing this thing where I'm moving into a bus, right? So I sold this house and got rid of vast majority, 2/3 of my possessions. I'm going to move into this tiny house now. So that's part of simplifying my life. Not everyone has to do that, but that's just one thing that I'm going to work on and do. And reducing your needs. There's this sign, see if I can remember it, the sign in the monastery that said, if there's anything you need, just let us know. We'll show you how to get along without it.
Nice.
So most of my life, I know that when I've had a need, I just, instead of thinking about, do I really need that? Or and trying to find a way to meet that need, it becomes this pursuit of instant gratification in Western culture that I've fallen into a trap. And so I think, all of this inner excellence, I need it more than anyone in these 9 disciplines. One of them is simplify your life. And part of that, reducing your needs is reducing if you reduce what you have, like your possessions, then your life just becomes a little simpler. And I'm not saying, I have a Prime membership on Amazon, and I've ordered a couple things a week for the last infinite amount of years, feels like. And so I've gotten into a trap just like everyone else. But the more things you have, the more things you get attached to, and the more you have to think about. And so part of the best possible life is to have a clear mind and an unburdened heart. And as you're talking about breathing, I thought about that discipline of simplifying your life, because part of that simplifying is less things, but also less breaths.
Yeah.
And maybe you can share quickly about that, because I think I'm just learning about this, something that you've been studying for quite a while now, but just learning about how we've overbreathed. I tape my mouth shut now at night when I sleep, because I'm trying to be a nose breather instead of a mouth breather, and to breathe less, getting more into the 5 to 6 breaths a minute rather than the 10 to 12 where I've been.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, it's the majority of the population, and it still blows my mind how unknown it is over breathing, and it's this vicious cycle. Many people think of it as this straight line, as in one or the other, like cause and effect, whereas life doesn't work like that. It's all in a straight line. It's like when someone goes to a PT to get fit, that PT should be asking, well, how do you sleep? How do you eat? What stress is in your life? Because that all affects how you can change your body. Because if you change your mind, you can change your body. It all goes hand in hand. You can't do one without the other. You can lift as many weights as you want, but if you're still depressed and living in fear, then you might have a 6-pack, but you're probably not actually made many steps in your life. And so in terms of over breathing, the basics of it is we exhale too much carbon dioxide. Something called the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve shifts to the left, meaning oxygen becomes a lot more sticky to hemoglobin. It doesn't release as readily. And so you may breathe it in, but it goes all the way around the body and breathe it straight back out. And then you become oxygen deficient. So you have less energy, less focus, worse sleep, etc., etc. So if we
that's
reduce,
largely from mouth breathing, right?
Yeah, over breathing, short, shallow mouth breathing. Noses are generally made for breathing. Mouths are made for eating. Mouths are really only there for when we're in a very heightened state, like, in sort of very, very long times ago when we needed to run from a saber-toothed tiger and really get on that fast sprint, maybe we'd need to use our mouths then. Or if for some reason the nasal passage was obstructed, we have a plan B. It's very smart, but it's definitely not the prime mechanism, so much so that there's even research where it's affecting the myofascial structure of children, and children are looking sort of more gaunt and more just less alive, or because they are not breathing as we were made to breathe. So when we reduce our breathing and when we breathe using our key breathing muscle, our diaphragm, we support our body, and that curve shifts to the right. So oxygen disassociates from your hemoglobin a lot more readily. So just by breathing less, a lot more oxygen gets delivered to your tissues, muscles, cells, organs. Your blood pH is much more balanced. Interesting as well is when you breathe less, you actually crave less food. So interesting when you talk about needing less is you're a lot less needy, it seems, when you breathe less, because you have everything you need. And there's an interesting fact that the blood is already saturated 95 to 99% oxygen before you even take a breath. So it's that idea, you have everything you need. You don't need to go out there and get anything else. It's all within you. And I think that translates beautifully into an excellence in terms of that it's all already there. You don't need to get or do anything. It's actually more a sense of unlocking what is already residing within you. And so when I sort of coach people or begin any sort of fitness or breathwork journey with people, I like to call it a homecoming rather than a seeking of anything else. You're not going to get anything. That sort of, I see a vision there of going to a shop and like buying something, and it's not outward, it's within, and to be evoked. So that's how I see it anyway.
Awesome. Yeah, it's kind of like in inner excellence in that what I want to help people do is develop inner strength, inner peace. And because if you have great circumstances and great results, and but your inner world is in turmoil, then you're going out into the world in weakness. But if you have inner strength and inner peace, and your outside world is in chaos, and you don't have money or possessions or things like that, you go into the world in strength.
You're almost unbreakable or untouchable, right? Because if you're not scared of failure, you're not embarrassed, you're unoffendable, unembarrassable, etc., no one can touch you. There's nothing to lose, but everything to gain, right?
Yeah. The other, I was going to share the other discipline of the 2 of the 9 was to be still. Because you mentioned anxiety. And so that kind of correlates with breathing less. Ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life is part of that. And inner excellence is really a series of routines and habits that you implement your whole life or your whole day. And so, for example, when I go grocery shopping, I don't know how this ended up being this way, but one of the ways I remember to ruthlessly eliminate hurry is when I step out of the grocery store and my first step hits the parking lot, I'm like, okay, ruthlessly eliminate hurry. I'm going to walk very slowly and presently, of course, unless a car is coming.
Right.
But, having routines like that, like say when you're starting your day, tying your shoes, getting to the course, tying your shoes, whatever it is, having these routines where you're attaching a new habit or mindset to that routine, it can be very helpful.
Yeah. And making time, I suppose, for those routines in terms of prioritizing that. If your ultimate goal is to live the most wholehearted fullness of life, then you would get up 2 hours earlier to make sure that you did your breath work to regulate yourself, that you did your movement or your workout or whatever to invigorate and energize your body so you were physically strong. and to, well, the most important, to cultivate that inner strength, to practice regulating your mind. I think that's an important point, actually, I suppose, in terms of those routines we're talking about. And part of the getting comfortable with the uncomfortable itself is that it is a practice. I wonder if the world these days thinks that having just the intention is enough. You know, everyone that makes those New Year's resolutions and goes, do you know what? I'm going to be this. Mm-hmm. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to be this. And they have all this enthusiasm and this drive and this passion. And then a month later, they've lost it. And they're back into the old routines and habits that aren't serving them and feeling disappointed. So making time and prioritizing to execute those routines, is that the key to?
Well, with inner excellence, I've been doing this for a little while now. And if I were to say, okay, I'm going to take tomorrow off and I'm just going to be no inner excellence, I'm just going to be neutral, then likely I would get caught up in my results and circumstances, which is where fear and anxiety is. Getting caught up in it means being attached to it, to what I want but can't control. And so it's like the 747 flying from Seattle to San Diego, constantly off course, GPS bringing it back on course every few seconds. That's what we need, because we're immersed in a world that is telling you everything opposite of what I'm telling you and what the book says. And you take a few days off, and I obviously I just said to be still. And so I think taking days off, a vacation from work is super important and powerful. Another one of the disciplines is to examine your life and to take time to examine your life. With inner excellence, we're constantly being clear about, what do I want most in my life? Where do I find my joy? How do I want to feel in my life? What's the type of person that I want to become? How do I want to live? Meaning, how do I want to face adversity? How do I want to face the challenges in my life? Yeah. And so again, I know after thinking it through that what I really want most is to live with deep contentment, joy, and confidence, independent of circumstances and results.
Yeah.
And so for that, I need to daily surrender control, daily remind myself of my purpose, take care of my body and mind, and especially, and this is the number one thing that I learned in the desert, 5 years of full-time writing and research, is that your heart is the key to your life. It's the key to performing under pressure. It's the key when you have the biggest performance of your life coming up. Your heart is the key. It's the key if you want to have a meaningful, fulfilling life. Your heart is the key. If you want to walk in love and not fear, your heart is the key. Everything you do originates in your heart. That's where your greatest fears and greatest passions are. It's in your heart. So sometimes I get referred to as a sports psychologist, and I definitely use sports psychology. The difference between inner excellence and sports psychology is that sports psychology deals only with the mind. And to me, the mind is a super crucial and important part of training your heart. It's where the heart does get trained. But that's the purpose of the mind is to train the heart. And if you're a counselor, a coach, or parent, and you don't train the heart and focus on the heart, then you're missing the central component of all of our lives.
Man, it's so powerful. And, even taking that time to ask those questions is a terrifying thing, because that means potentially quitting the job that you hate doing, but that pays your rent, and risking, well, what if I don't have a job? And what if I don't have the money to pay my rent? I'm going to risk that to take the time to tap into my heart or heart-head coherence and really ask those deep questions. I mean, that takes balls in itself to actually step away from the rat race of the world. From, if you're not earning money right now, then you are a failure of society. If you're not, all those things we're taught from age 5, maybe even earlier, if you're not contributing to society, you are a failure, you're not a decent human or whatever, when actually is the best thing we could all do for ourselves is to actually step back and to be in stillness and to be in solitude, to actually ask those deep questions that so many people maybe are afraid of the answers. Do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I have these inner excellence retreats that I lead around the world. And this is where we kind of dive into this personal development, personal awareness, developing awareness of who you are, what you want most in your life, and then learning inner excellence principles and clarifying your the mission and purpose for your life.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Okay, final question, because I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're a busy person, but and this is a big one, so I'm sorry if this is a load. If you could state one thing that you want to see change in the global collective for the future, what would it be? In terms of how, as a collective, as a society, and maybe I'll limit this to the modern world, okay? How we approach life. What would you put in? Say you're Mr. President of the universe. What would be your first?
So you're in Dublin, is that right?
England.
England?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
That's all right.
In Great Britain.
Uh-huh.
So, and I'm here in America, and as you know, in America, we've had a lot of turmoil going on in the last few years, and a lot of unrest. And one of the things that has happened to me a lot in my life, and I think happens to most people, is they put being right in front of living their purpose and their energy. Let me clarify what I mean. So inner excellence is a set of, it's a mindset. I compete to raise the level of excellence in my life, to learn and grow in order to raise it in others. Remind me of the question.
If you had to, I know it's a loaded question. If you had to change one thing going forward about the modern society, what would it be? As a collective,
okay.
As a collective.
Yeah, so I was going to share that most of us, we get caught up in wanting to be right at the expense of our own energy and our own freedom and joy and our own peace. And this is a big problem that has happened a lot in my life, and I think happens in most people's lives, is they get really bent out of shape at some circumstance or something someone said. So they lose sight of their mission, their purpose, and lose sight of the importance of staying in a rhythm each day. Because for most people, in my experience, someone could be a total stranger, could be that they've never seen before, could be driving in a car next to them and lift a finger, and that would completely throw them off for hours. Right. And they have no idea who this person is, and that person just completely hijacked their life. It could be for hours of the whole day. They're so upset at this person that they don't even know. But it happens in many, many ways throughout the days, where some circumstance or some person will totally take their emotions and take them out of their rhythm and flow. And I think being in a rhythm and flow every day is so important to achieve anything special, and not get caught up in especially in judgment.
I wonder if, as a collective society, if we were all more in rhythm, even like 10% more in rhythm, how much more we could achieve together, as a community.
It's not walking in love. When I say walking in love, a lot of people think it's a soft thing that Jim wants me to be a nice guy or a nice girl. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you want to perform with peace and confidence under the most pressure, and if you want to have an extraordinary life, if you want to be fearless, then you can't do it walking in fear, and you can't do it walking in self-protection. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to you have to pursue being wholehearted, because and if you're wholehearted, then that means you're going to have compassion, and you'll have compassion for others and yourself. You can't have compassion for yourself or others if you're running around all day super busy. We need to slow down, because compassion interrupts our lives. And so you're not going to have compassion for others if you don't have time for others. And if you don't have compassion for others, then you're not going to have compassion for yourself.
Give your best, right? And only what you can control. Wow. Jim, it's been mind-boggling, blowing, amazing, as expected. Thank you so much for talking to me. This message is so incredibly important, more important than ever, I would say, where we are in history right now. Always has been, always will be, but I think it's very poignant at this time. So thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on your show and for hanging out with me this morning.
Yeah, you're so welcome.